Hey guys, I'm Sai and welcome to Ace Podcast Nation and welcome to Down with the Machine Series 2 Episode number 3, which is our conspiracy theories. Conspiracy theory series. Fuck's sake. And we are about to talk one of the biggest conspiracies of the last, certainly the modern day. So last episode we talked about Princess Diana and her death. This kind of links into that, and then the next episode is going to be part 2 of Princess Diana, where we're going to look into who was behind the death, and some of the theories around today's conspiracy kind of link into that, in my opinion. So it's going to be an interesting chat, probably not one for the faint of heart. It's going to contain like bits and pieces of conversation which is of an adult nature, certainly not for the people who are offended. He's not offended, but a nervous disposition, should we say. It's going to contain some adult conversations or whatever, but we're just going to discuss in detail the Jeffrey Epstein, mainly the conspiracies around his suicide, but also some of the stuff which he was done as well, his suicide, in inverted commas, he says. But joining me as usual to talk about another conspiracy is Mr. Rhys P, conspiracy theory enthusiast. Welcome, my friend. You right, buddy?
Yeah, good to be back again, Ty.
Indeed. Down with the Machine, episode 3, season 2.
What I'm looking forward to.
Yeah, it's good, mate. I'm loving it. I've enjoying it. So it's like, where do you start with Jeffrey Epstein? It's like, I do want to focus mainly on his, like, the suicide and that side of it, but we'll give a brief kind of, not a brief, it's difficult to brief, but like basically what he's been accused of and what he's like and what led up to him being in prison, and the elites and celebrities and the royals and politicians, pretty much everyone you could think of in the world with any fame or power, getting a bit twitchy about what he was going to say and what he was going to reveal. So I'll tell you what, mate, in your own words, tell us a bit about Jeffrey Epstein, when like where it started for him, and kind of like, you know, a bit about him generally.
He's an enigma, really, isn't he? Because he was a child genius, as everyone knows. You know, he went through business school, etc. But nobody actually knows where he made his money. How did he get to the point of being in control of all these powerful people's money? Nobody knows where Epstein made his money. No one on Wall Street knows. There's no answer there. So the conspiracy should be starting way back then. You know, was he was he that evil genius who thought, well, the business I need to make money in is sex?
Yeah, it's a weird one, mate, because he was kind of struggling away in his various businesses and not really making a massive success of himself, and then all of a sudden he sold some stock, I think it was, or sold a company, and he was worth billions, and he had so much money, like he would never ever be short of anything. He ended with a private jet, properties around the world. It's a weird one, and people do think that a lot of his money came from blackmailing higher up people, because the richer he got, he became, or he was around celebrities, politicians, people like this, and it just grew from there. Because in the one documentary which I watched on him on Netflix, there was the woman who obviously accused him of raping her and stuff. She said when she worked in his office, not even at his house, at his office, straight away Ghislaine Maxwell said, there's cameras here, here, here and here, like just in the reception of the office. So you think if he had cameras in that, just his office in New York or whatever it was, in the centre of New York, like if he's got cameras looking at the receptionist.
Home offices, mate.
Say again?
I can't think what building it was. He used it as a home and an office.
Yeah, but
almost every yeah, she worked for receptionist, and they explained about all the pinhole cameras, didn't they?
Yeah, and I just think if he's got cameras in like his office in central New York, he's gonna have cameras in when he's having these wild sex parties with Prince Andrew and Donald Trump, or whoever it may be. He's gonna have cameras because he wants proof that they're doing stuff they shouldn't be, even if it's, and that's not to say that every celebrity, or politician that went to his property was doing what Jeffrey Epstein was, in terms of doing it against people's will, or to underage girls or boys or whatever. It could be as simple as cheating on their wife, or just being with a hooker, things like that, which someone high up in the government doesn't want to come out, or a celebrity whose image is very much about family, or them and their wife as a couple and a brand. If they get caught with a hooker, for instance, and he's got proof of it, they're going to do whatever he says to get out of it. And I believe that's how he made his money early on. And the more he was with these people, the higher the caliber of politician, celebrity, etc. was that he was mixing with. And I think one thing to point out, kind of from the start, I suppose, but there's the plane which was nicknamed the Lolita Express, which is frightening in itself. When they went to I forget which, there was a celebrity who needed to get it was Clinton. Bill Clinton needed to get a private jet to North Africa for whatever reason, and Jeffrey Epstein offered the services of his jet. And on this jet, it was basically like you could see the manifest. It was full up of just massive celebrities. Now, that's not to say that every celebrity on that plane is guilty of anything, and we're not saying that. Everything apart from Jeffrey Epstein's crimes, which he was convicted of, or he's dead now, so it's not alleged. Everything which
people who went to the island maybe once or twice, you can maybe give them the benefit of the doubt. People who went there 4, 5, 6 times, they have known about something that was going on, even if they weren't involved. So to me, they're fucking guilty of it.
Yeah, mate, here's the thing, right? If you're going on a jet that's nicknamed the Lolita Express to a private island, and the plane's full of young-looking girls, shall we say, at least, at best, they're young-looking girls, at worst, they're underage girls. Like, to me, I don't think that any of those people can, with a straight face, say, "Oh, I didn't realise what was going on." At the very least, and whether they did whatever they did, they know what they did. But to me, if you're going on a jet, which is nicknamed that, with the people who were on it, to a private island, you know what's going on at the least, you know.
Fucking right.
And you're talking like in the lawsuit, they were saying there was like girls as young as 11 on that jet and stuff. Now that makes me fucking sick in itself, because as does much of it. But like, you know, that's the age of when I'm on kids. Like, it's just
It's the most innocent, precious thing on the earth.
oh mate, I fucking it, and like that's what I found really hard.
To like this island, the way more and more people are coming out and exposing things in Hollywood and that now, I think this is the ultimate expression of the price of fame. You know, if you want
Yeah,
to be famous, you've got to turn a blind eye or get involved.
yeah. So
And
I
then
just quick,
and certain places where the moral was too much for them, they've come out. Most of them are dead.
yeah,
I,
yeah. They're either the people who've come out like are either dead, or the celebrities which have ever tried to speak out about like Hollywood paedophilia and that, they either end up dead or they get discredited massively. But not necessarily their stories be discredited, but they get discredited as being like off their nut conspiracy theories, crazy. Like you look at the way Corey Feldman's been treated, you look at the way
everyone's career got ruined. Whoever spoke out against him ever, the Mel Gibson, he was such a big star, they knew they couldn't sort of battle him that one. So they made him out to be this crazy religious fanatic, didn't they?
yeah, well, they made him out to be. I know he said like some questionable things, but
Yeah.
they built on that, didn't they? So some of that North American jet, which Clinton was on, which basically went to Africa in 2002. Some of the people on that jet, Kevin Spacey, who has obviously been accused of some stuff, Chris Tucker was on there, and you know
I love Chris.
there's a fact, you know, they're facts. Those people were on those planes. There's that's not alleged. What is alleged is whether they did anything wrong when they were on the plane, when they were, you know, when they got there.
Like you said, they must have known something.
Yeah.
Choice. Like if you've only been on that plane maybe once or twice, we don't know, because I don't actually know when it was sort of named the Lolita Express.
Yeah. I don't know if it was it was named after it, or if it was like an ongoing thing where it was always called that. I'm not sure.
Yeah, that's something I can't find an answer to.
So, like one of the witnesses, Virginia Gaffur, who claims, you know, she was there. She claims she was one of his sex slaves, and she was aboard that plane at the same time as Prince Andrew, and this is according to a court document which was unsealed after Epstein's death. In the testimony, she detailed that there was constant orgies at the private island. She was forced to travel the world with Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein and have sex with whoever they told her to, you know. And she's on about Prince Andrew. She's on about some of the biggest names in the world. I wanted to swing back on something. I mentioned Donald Trump earlier, and I know you're a bit on the fence, not about Donald Trump and his politics and stuff. That is what it is. But I know you're a bit on the fence of whether, you said to me before, whether he's involved in this stuff or whether he's actually trying to expose it, and that's why he had so little contact with Jeffrey Epstein after their initial meeting, because they met and there's obviously video of them meeting and it doesn't look great. But then after that, he didn't really have any contact with him, at least publicly.
Like that, the meeting in the video, and the way because we know what Epstein did now, it seems horrible and sleazy and whatever it might be. It's like me and you being in a bar, mate, having a drink and going, look at that girl and she's hot.
Yeah. Yeah, it's difficult, isn't it?
Being taken out of context, because they're not looking at a young girl or nothing like that. And Trump now has sort of come forward and spoke out that he knew Epstein, which he did. And I've looked into as much as I can with this, and from what I can gather, the way it kind of looks is Trump discovered bits of what were going on. And as rich and as powerful as he was at the time, He's a clever businessman. He knew he wasn't powerful enough to go to war with these people. He would lose. Simple as that.
Yeah,
But he
yeah,
uses, from he banned Epstein from coming anywhere near his properties and things.
yeah. He banned him from his hotels and his golf
Yeah,
courses, I think, as well, didn't he?
it's, we won't know until it's all out, mate. But I think I'm not pro Trump, but I like what he's
No,
doing.
yeah. I think from that point of view, he does seem focused on exposing these Hollywood types, and then
Yeah,
I think if he is that, now I'm not 100% sure on it because it's difficult to work, to work out if that is the case. Like, what is that? Why people are then accusing him to try and kind of discredit and just associate him with all of it? I
off,
don't
off,
know. It's difficult, isn't it?
yeah.
But like I
If
say,
anyone has any evidence on Trump, there's so many people who want him out of power. That evidence
yeah,
would be out by now, mate. Guaranteed. You look at all the things that are out now about Biden, the Biden, like his name, Joe Biden.
yeah,
Look at the
yeah.
picture.
Someone would pass it to him, wouldn't they?
If there was something out there about Trump, it'd be out there by now. Not just Karen or Steve on Facebook saying they've watched the YouTube video and this is what they know. There would be solid evidence out there, mate. I don't care what anyone says.
Yeah, 100%, mate. So I fully agree with that part of it. Like, there's so many people out to get him that if there was anything, it would be out. And I know
Yeah,
some people will probably like say, "Oh, there's this article and there's this article," but with all due respect, I can write an article, and if you put it in the right journalist's hands or the right newspaper's hands, they'll run it because they have got an agenda. Like, I want to see actual evidence of wrongdoing.
if 5 different papers did exactly the same story, you would read them 5 papers, and if they changed the names, you'd think they're different stories. No
Yeah,
papers ever report something the same. And it
yeah,
depends where in the world you are as well.
yeah, for sure, mate. And the other thing is, like, I like to, like I said this on another show recently, like, I don't like the way the world is at the moment, whereby you can accuse someone of whatever, not just like sexual assault. You can accuse someone of anything on social media, and if it gets enough people retweeting it and sharing it or whatever, then that's it. You're guilty. And I
They
think, like,
kind
people's
of a
careers can be over, people can lose their jobs, and it's like, hang on a minute, like, what
I've
happened
been
to proving something first?
what happened with me on social media. We won't discuss it, but I've been through all that, mate. It only takes one person saying a bad thing about somebody, whether it's true or not. People don't care about that. They just love jumping on a bandwagon, and nobody wants to read the leaflet. Vote back for it. They all just want to jump on. People love to see others suffer.
Yeah, people love negativity, don't they? Unfortunately, it's just the way people function. Like, if you do like, if I label, do you know, if I label like a clip of a podcast and I make it like slightly more negative, as if it's like a rant or something, and then I label one which is like something positive, the one which is negative or a bit more kind of like sensational, that will do better every time to start with. Like, the content might eventually like kind of speaks for itself. The better clip will do better, but like, generally, like, people will gravitate to kind of the negativity side of it, which is, it's sad, isn't it, that that's what we are. Like, it should be about the truth and, this, that and the other. But
We live in a world of negativity because everyone is pretty much so down. Nobody wants to see anyone else positive either.
yeah, people want to drag you down as soon
Some
as you're
people are not
successful in it.
It's just the way of the world at the moment, unfortunately.
Oh yes. Okay, so like, I'm just trying to find the. Sorry, I'm just trying to find the timeline so I can go through the timeline. Just give me 2 secs. But
What now? Epstein's death.
yeah, just the general timeline so I can kind of label some of the dates and that. And so I want to. I tell you what we'll do then. Here's some conspiracy theories about how he made his money or what he was to get where he was, because there's a few theories around that. So the first theory, and you can tell me then after each one if you want, like you can discuss it and you can tell me whether you think it's fact or fiction, if you like.
Yeah.
So the theory number one, Jeffrey Epstein was a Mossad banker. So Israel, essentially, he was called Epstein, and he had a photo taken with some very prominent Israeli people. Cockburn, which I think is a stockbroker type thing, can report that in late 1982 Epstein was seen at a bar mitzvah in Westchester, waving his hands while animatedly with a man about salmon. It's basically that he was something to do with the Mossad. There's not a great deal of evidence to it, in my opinion. The plausibility of it is very low. I'd give it like a 3 out of 10 because there's just not enough meat to the bones. What do you think about it? Was he a Mossad agent?
I've heard it mentioned sort of briefly, but if they had any relationship whatsoever, it was Mossad using him, not him using them.
Okay.
They're beyond the Secret Service level of Mossad. They're the best in the world at what they do. Let's be fair. And I think they'd have found out what he was doing and what he was like. And it's not that they'd have disassociated with him because of that, because people in positions of power like that have to live in those circles. But I don't think Epstein was a big player for them, should we say.
No, I think that's
bits of information, but I don't think he was a big player in any way, shape or form.
And then the next one, he was a Russian troll. Or maybe Epstein was the king of compromat, or the Chinese, whose ties to leading democratic figures had been long stuff of legend, even back in the 90s when Donald Trump was a Democrat, sort of. The Russians made good villains because they kept insisting on being villainous. Epstein's homes, especially the infamous bungalows in New York and the Sunshine State, were apparently bugged. You had Wild, Bill Clinton and Jeffrey Epstein, other guests, didn't know they were entrapped. Did Bill Clinton make a mistake of underestimating Vladimir Putin's number 2 in Jeffrey Epstein? I would give this one slightly higher because the Russians are very clever, and Jeffrey Epstein had access to some of the biggest names in the world. I'd give it more of like a 5 or a 6 out of 10, but there's nothing like there where I'm like, yeah, I can see that definitely.
Again, I think it's more a case of they were using Epstein and he probably was feeding a little bit of information, because people like him crave more and more power, don't they? And if he was sort of thought he was in with every government and big player in the world, he'd think he's rising to the top and going to be the most powerful.
Yeah, 100%, mate. And the thing is,
information on everything.
Yeah, and I think he's one of those people, mate, going by what Ghislaine Maxwell has said as well, like that they used to just trade information with people and blackmail people, and they were very much like those people who've just got something on everyone, and they just play everybody against everybody, and they basically just do whatever they need for their agenda if they're in trouble. And we'll get into some of the crimes that he was looking like go to prison for, and then magically he just suddenly was off the hook. One of the people who got him off the hook is actually really high up in the Trump's government now, or he was. I think he might have been fired, but we'll get into that in a minute. Theory number 3, he was a common criminal. Maybe people are just overthinking it, and Jeffrey Epstein was just a financial fraudster who frequently rubbed shoulders with the rich and famous, stole a lot of money, blackmailed people, slept with underage girls. His old party pals are now too embarrassed to be associated with him. They do carry financial losses. They're not willing to disclose it publicly because of the crimes committed back in the day, and either because they know there's no money left because he was obviously in prison at this time, or because they don't want to be prosecuted for things he might have evidence of. And he recorded everything because he was a fucking cunt.
Yeah.
And any chance of monetizing this video just went. Plausibility, I would give that a big fat 8 out of 10, because that pretty much explains everything. But when I say that explains everything, I am going to get into some of the conspiracies around his death and this, that and the other, which are separate from that. But in terms of how he made his money and him generally coming up, I think that is the most plausible theory, that he just he blackmailed people to get his money, he made his money, and then stole some money and basically used the system and just traded information after that.
Yeah, I think when he was young, he stumbled across some information somewhere that he used to blackmail or heighten his position, and thought, I can keep doing this, and I thought it just got bigger and bigger and grow.
Yeah, do you know what I think as well? I do think that initial money, where the way his money just appeared from nowhere, I believe that was probably done from insider trading, and then from there,
somebody on Wall Street would have known about him then, mate.
Yeah, but they can easily be paid off.
I think he stumbled upon thing and made money straight away from taking from someone else, but not.
Yeah, he could have stolen it.
Started trading anything like that. Somebody in Wall Street would have known something.
100%, mate. And then the final couple of theories, you've got he's a tax dodger. So there was rumours that there's London and New York are after him for taxes. He was assisting wealthy clients who were trying to evade tax evasion and stuff. So then he was helping them do the same and being paid a lot of money for it. Also would explain why he was always jetting to the Caribbean, the Cayman Islands and stuff. Might also explain why no one's come forward to say anything. He is very, very rich. And people could have paid him a commission to hide their money from the tax people. He can afford to do that, and at the end of the day, he had so much money. The game is rigged, as we all know, and if he was able to hide his money very well to avoid tax avoidance to a massive level, then why wouldn't other elite celebrities, politicians, pay him a lot of money to do so? I think that's pretty plausible. I don't think that's how he made all his money, but I think he probably was doing that as well as the previously mentioned thing.
You can launder money, you've got to have legitimate businesses to do it.
Like political campaigns, you mean?
Yeah. But I think it's pretty fucking obvious he was avoiding tax, The guy's got kids, mate. I don't think he cares about much.
Yeah, mate, and there's a rare interview with him, isn't there? Where he's really creepy, especially when you look back on it. Although I think it's creepy, even if at the time he basically says he's got so much money that he just does what he wants, and when you look at that with hindsight of all his crimes, it's like fucking hell, what a twat, what a evil.
He was also at the time. And how people do it. We look to Hollywood and places like that, for our heroes and all this bollocks. And that's what the world has become. It's fucked up.
Yeah, people it's all about fame and stuff, isn't it? I don't get it at all. And then the final one is Eyes Wide Open, they call it. So basically, if you've seen Stanley Kubrick's film of Eyes Wide Shut, people consider that to be basically an expose of what Hollywood is like. And that's why Stanley Kubrick ended up died while he was editing it. It goes into the Rothschilds and basically the sex mafia, if you like. One day, mate, we'll do a show on Stanley Kubrick and all those conspiracies, because they're really interesting and entertaining and stuff. But I think it's pretty common knowledge that when you watch Eyes Wide Shut, there was certainly Stanley Kubrick was trying to tell people something, and he probably died for it as well. But whether that's got anything to do with Epstein, I don't think I think that's his big fat zip.
I think it's got to do with the whole thing, mate.
Yeah.
But I think Epstein is way at the top of the chain of this whole thing.
Yeah, 100%. Right, let's get this timeline up and we can go through. Right, so you've got a timeline of what Jeffrey. So this was his final hours. So July the 6th, Jeffrey Epstein was arrested on federal charges for allegedly running a sex trafficking enterprise between 2002 and 2005, where he paid underage girls to have sex with him at his Manhattan home and his estate in Palm Beach. He was held at the Metropolitan Correction Center in Manhattan. July 8th, 2 days later, he pleaded not guilty to sex trafficking of minors, conspiracy to engage with minors and trafficking. July 10th, he was assigned to a prison special housing unit known as the SHU or the SHU due to the risk factors of suicidality and safety concerns relating to housing him in general population. In the SHU, inmates are assigned 6 separate tiers, each of which has 8 cells. July the 18th, a federal judge denies him bail and rules that he must remain in the correctional centre pending his trial. July 23rd, prison officers find Jeffrey Epstein on the floor of his cell with a strip of bedsheet around his neck. He is subsequently transferred out of the SHU, placed on suicide watch in the hospital wing, where he is observed 24 hours a day by a staff member or a specially trained inmate companion. He remains on suicide watch for about 24 hours and then is transferred to for psychological evaluation, which is also in the hospital wing. 7 days later, July 30th, Epstein is transferred back to the SHU, but is required to have an assigned cellmate. He was assigned the cell to the closest to the officer's desk in the SHU's common area, which is about 15 feet from his cell. July 31st, he appears in court, shows no visible signs of injury. Next court appearance set for October the 8th. So we'll stop there. So in the first kind of week or two of him being in prison, he tried to kill himself. So he was on suicide watch, etc., etc. Now, I think it's pretty common that we're going to agree that we don't think he killed himself in the end.
Yep.
Did he try and kill himself in this initial period?
I think he might have been.
Yeah, I do too. Which kind of muddies the waters, because I know people will then say, well, if you think he killed himself then, or he tried to kill himself then, why wouldn't he have killed himself in the end? But it's because in the end,
that initial one, he calmed down more, and I think the initial one was more
panic,
scared, fright, and panic of everything that had come at once. And obviously, that was his only way out.
Yeah, he had no plan at this point, did he?
Yeah,
in terms of, he had no plan. He wasn't going to talk. He wasn't going to grass anyone up. He wasn't going to give them any evidence. You know, he felt like there was no way out. Whereas, so that last one there, which was the 31st of July, his next court date is on October the 8th. So he's got like 3 months basically to make a deal with the authorities to get himself a cushy deal whereby, look, I'll give you Prince Andrew, I'll give you Bill Clinton, I'll give you whoever, big names, and I'll give you evidence to go with it. But I don't want to serve in, I want a nice cushy jail where I can go and see out the rest of my life in comfort.
Yeah.
Would be my guess. So August the 9th, hundreds of pages of court documents are unsealed in New York. And for me, this is where it changes, where things start getting unsealed. And this is where politicians, celebrities, royalty start panicking. Because everyone knows he's filmed stuff. You've got Ghislaine Maxwell saying he has evidence on everyone. And, she was openly saying Jeffrey Epstein has got video of all sorts of people, just like she's saying about herself now. They're unsealed, and there's alleged new details of sexual abuse against Epstein and several associates. So now you've got these court documents in the public domain, which are not only saying about him, but it's bringing other people into it. So if he had successfully killed himself, none of these people get associated with it because the case closes with him, as it has now where he's died. So 8 p.m. August the 9th, same day, Epstein's cellmate is transferred out of the prison in a routine pre-arranged transfer. No new cellmate is assigned. First red flag for me, because the whole point of the cellmate was so that he could bring an alarm if he tries to do something. 4 p.m. the same day, Tova Noel, a 31-year-old officer at the MCC, so that's the Metropolitan Correctional Centre, begins the first of 2 back-to-back 8-hour shifts in the SHU. Noel has been employed as the correctional officer at the MCC since 2016. Noel and an unarmed Officer 1, who is unnamed, do not perform the required 4 p.m. institutional count. Internal video shows, according to the indictment, that they complete and sign the slip, falsely saying that they did. The count slip is collected and delivered to the control centre, where the officers responsible for comparing the slips and making sure all the checks are done check the slip, say it's done. The indictment says 5:03 the same day, based on the falsified slip, the control centre clears the 4 p.m. the count as being, the check is being done. August 9th, by or before the 10 p.m, all inmates are locked in their cells for the night. August 9th, 10 p.m, Noel and unarmed Officer 2 do not perform the required 10 p.m. institutional count. Internal video proves this. They complete and sign the slip falsely to say they did. 10:30, Noel briefly walks up to and walks back from the door to the tier in which Epstein is housed. Internal video shows this. This is the last time anybody walks up to the entrance where Epstein was held until 6:30 the next day, the indictment says. So, at 10:30 on August the 9th, the closest thing they've done to a check all day on Jeffrey Epstein since his cellmate was transferred out at, 8 a.m? Yeah, 8 a.m. he was transferred out. So 8 a.m. to 10:30, the closest anyone has done to doing a check on him is to walk up by the door of his cell. That's it. That sets up massive alarm bells for me, because those are
half-hourly checks on me.
Yeah, those officers, experienced officers, there's no way that someone on suicide watch, a high-profile prisoner like Jeffrey Epstein, they're going to suddenly start forging checks, because you just wouldn't. If you've got a high-profile prisoner like that, you're going to make sure he don't die on your watch. Do you know what I mean? So that's alarm bells and red flags for me. 10:36, based on the falsified slips, the control centre clears the 10 p.m. checks. August the 10th, 12 a.m, so 12 a.m. that night, Michael Thomas, a 41-year-old officer at the MCC, begins the 8-hour shift on duty in the SHU. Thomas has been employed as an officer at the MCC since 2007. 2013, he was assigned to work as a materials handle officer, but still regularly worked overtime shifts in the correctional centre. Thomas and Noel, the only 2 correctional officers on duty, do not perform the required 12 a.m. check. Internal video proves this. They complete and sign the count slip, falsely saying that they did. So again, no one's checked on him. These are really vastly experienced officers. So even if you're saying that Noel, the initial one, he's done back-to-back shifts, he was tired, he kind of didn't want to do it, or he's tired, or he half-assed it. The other guy, who's even more experienced, been there since 2007, has come on duty at 12 a.m. Why would he falsify his check? It makes no sense.
They've either done it for money, or they genuinely believe Epstein was a suicide risk.
but I just think the latter is so unlikely because he tried to kill himself 2 weeks, 3 weeks earlier.
He
Like
did,
that's
but then,
why he's in that unit.
I get that, for people in their position, they've learned to read these people in these situations quite well with that amount of experience.
Yeah, but to not do a check all day.
Yeah, it could well be that they genuinely 100% believe he was no suicide risk. Or
Right.
they took the money.
Okay, but all right. Let's go with they didn't believe he genuinely didn't believe he was a suicide risk. That's fine. I trust their experience. They can do that. That's fine. So if that's the case, then surely you would just don't do the every half hour. You just do like the lunch. Don't check until lunchtime, and then don't check again until the night time. But you check at some point.
I've got to agree with you, but you know me, I've got to play devil's advocate and bring a...
Yeah, no, I get that, but like you've at some point
on the
they've
other side,
got to do a check, like.
on the flip side, they wanted him to die, and they've probably done it with prisoners before, where they falsified documents, but it's never been a prisoner of this caliber.
No one's given a flying fuck. Yeah. So
it unravels more fucking another can of worms open.
Oh yeah. So based on that, the 12 a.m. count and check is cleared. August the 10th, 12 a.m. to 6:30 a.m. Noel and Thomas failed to complete any required 30-minute rounds in the shoe, authorities say. Noel completes and signs more than 75 separate 30-minute round entries, falsely saying that he conducted the rounds. Noel and Thomas, seated at the officer's desk area, use computers, move around the shoe common area for about 2 hours. Noel and Thomas sit at their desk without moving, appearing to be asleep. The indictment says Noel uses the computer periodically, including to search the internet for furniture sales, benefit websites. Thomas uses the computer briefly at 1 a.m, 4 a.m, and 6 a.m. to search for motorcycle sales, sports news, and similar, according to the indictment. Now, one thing I want to pick up from that is if, like, that sounds like they're not just doing his checks, they're not doing any checks in the night. Now, don't get me wrong, I bet it's a mind fucking numbing shift where you've got to go and check on these fucking scumbags who every half hour, and you just go in, they're asleep, you go back. Do you know what I mean? That's going to be like kill you. But again, I say high profile prisoner, you're not going to want him to die on your watch, etc, etc, etc. However, what I do think it probably indicates is that there was a fundamental issue in this correctional centre, that the night shift weren't doing the checks they were supposed to do.
There's probably a fundamental error in every correctional centre.
Yeah, I can't, like, it does seem that way. However, doing the flip side, if they got paid off, how would you try and cover it up? By not doing any checks, and then people think it's they never do any checks. It's not just because of Epstein, they just don't do the checks. And then if they don't do the checks in the night, and he's trying to work out the best time to kill himself, he's going to think to himself, well, I'll do it in the night because they don't do the checks.
Yeah.
So there is that as well if you want to play, that side of it. Noel and Thomas do not make the 3 a.m. count. Internal video shows they falsify the slips again. 3:24 based on the false slip. Control center clears the check. 4 a.m. the overnight supervisor visits Noel and Thomas in the shoe and confers with them before leaving. It doesn't say. I don't know if there's no sound on the computers, so they on the cameras. So I don't know if they can hear what they were talking about. Noel and Thomas don't make the 5 a.m. count. Internal video shows they falsify the slips. 5:30 the control center clears the 5 a.m. count. 5:30 another correctional officer briefly walks through the shoe common area. Video surveillance shows that nobody else entered the shoe. No one conducted any counts, rounds throughout the night, and no one entered the tier where Jeffrey Epstein was housed. So not only did they not go to his specific room, they didn't even go to his tier. Yeah, mate, I'm not having this at all. Shortly after 6 a.m, Noel and Thomas receive a delivery of breakfast carts into the shoe. Noel and Thomas walk up to and enter the tier where Epstein is housed to serve breakfast. At 6:33, an alarm is activated in the shoe. Epstein is alone in his cell, non-responsive, with a noose around his neck. An unnamed supervisor 1, who had just started his shift, responds to the alarm almost immediately. Noel approaches the door to the shoe to open it. Supervisor 1 says that Epstein has hung himself. The indictment said afterwards, Noel tells Supervisor 1, "We did not complete the 3 a.m. or 5 a.m. rounds." Thomas says, "We messed up and I messed up. She's not to blame. We didn't do any rounds." This was according to the indictment again. August 10th in the morning, Epstein's taken to hospital where he's pronounced dead of an apparent suicide. Unpack it, my friend.
There's too much evidence to point towards it being a suicide for it to be a suicide. Is that me?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, we'll go through some of the. We'll go through some of the other evidence now.
Look at all, like, first one, the springs to every, and they show the pictures of the house. Look at all the bed sheets that were there.
Yeah.
What, was you sleeping in the fucking laundry room? Come on.
And do you know what else as well? Like, so they did. This doctor did. He wasn't happy with the autopsy, so before they cremated the body or got rid of the body, he did his own autopsy of the body and assessed the evidence. So for this documentary, he did it. He said that the damage to the neck and the spine were not consistent with someone who had hung themselves. Like, with the way the neck had broken and stuff was not consistent with someone who had hung themselves.
Michael
Say again? Yeah.
Michael is the pathologist, yeah. Yeah, what's it called? It's a furrow, isn't it?
Say again?
It's a furrow, it's called. I think the mark left from a hanging. And Epstein is like the bottom of the throat there. But slightly up, when the hanging should be up.
But he said that the damage was more like you would get when someone like someone chokes you. So in Epstein's room as well, he had a machine because he had sleep apnea, which had a big long cord on it. Now, number one, if I was going to hang myself and I had a choice between a cord or tying bed sheets together, I'm going to go with the cord because I think it's more likely to work.
Yeah.
And so his injuries didn't add up to like to hanging, basically. I'm just trying to.
A different pathologist. They didn't do a pathology on him on anything, but from the evidence they.
They reviewed the evidence, didn't they?
He was choked with a bed sheet from behind.
Yeah.
But
so, I'm gonna bring up. I just try to find a list of the evidence, basically, of why it was not suicide, because it's quite substantial and it's quite convincing as well, like the physical evidence. Whereas, we'll also talk about the reasons why people would want him dead rather than, like why would someone want to kill him rather than just letting it go to court and stuff. So, yeah, you were right. It's the ligature furrow of the neck, and the petechial hemorrhaging and things like that is all consistent with someone being choked and fighting it rather than someone hanging themselves and doing it to themselves. So one big misconception floating around social media was that there was a note in his room which was a suicide note, but people think quite the opposite. It was actually a list of complaints, because he wrote so the list says, keep me in a locked shower stall for 1 hour, sent me burnt food, giant bugs crawling over my hands, no fun. So they've tried to make that out as like a suicide note, as if he's going mad, but in fact that people think, like this guy's sort of saying or speculating, that actually he's complaining about the treatment he's getting from these people in the jail. Then you've got in the photographs, the official photographs, there's 2 nooses were photographed in the cell, while other pieces of bed linen remained tied to other areas of the bunk. One was taken into evidence, seen in the photos, presumably because it was thought to be the noose which he used to kill himself. But the guard who found Epstein, he cut the noose. So if that were the case, the noose which is shown in the photos would have cut marks in it. It would be cut, and it's not. It's in no way does it look in any way like someone has frantically taken scissors to it or a knife to it. So that for me is like whoa, hang on a minute. Straight away, why doesn't that evidence add up? Because it's official evidence. There's no way that there should be any discrepancy. It's physical evidence taken from a crime scene.
But
so there is.
Out, how would the guard cut the noose? What way?
I don't know if they carry they wouldn't carry blades, would they?
Oh fuck no.
So yeah, I mean, he must have, maybe they had scissors at the desk or something.
When he said he walked in and cut the noose, how?
No. Maybe they do have like scissors and stuff at the desk where the computer is.
Actually,
I guess.
The suicide watch, but
even if it's like on their belts or something, I don't think they would be able to carry them on their belts, in case the prisoners got them. So, but they could have scissors at the desk for stationery and stuff. I guess.
But why would he have carried it to the door with him?
Yeah. So the next piece, there's no blood on the noose in the photo, yet the photo of Jeffrey Epstein's neck clearly indicates there's a massive band of blood all around it. So there would be blood straight away. Dr. Baden said the noose doesn't appear to match the wound on his throat. He also stated there were other wires and cords present that it would have been much easier to hang oneself within, and they would have been able to do it within a few minutes. Obviously referring to the sleep apnea machine, which I just mentioned. When I said about the referring to a second noose, it's shown in the photo, which I'll link this some of these websites in the description so people can have a look. But the photo appears to have a tiny loop in it with a knot, and then there's a knot at the other end, which basically it's like a lasso that a kid would make. Do you know what I mean? It doesn't look like anything which you're going to be able to use to hang yourself. It's pathetic, I gotta be honest. The noose that was put into evidence is still perfectly intact, aside from having no blood on it. How did they possibly slide that over his neck? Because the noose is not big enough to go over his neck, otherwise they wouldn't have been able to hang him. So how did they get it off? You tell me, mate. You're playing devil's advocate. Come on. How did they did they untie it and then tie it back up? Not sure that works for evidence collecting.
Maybe. That's my answer. Maybe.
Either these fuckers are the most inept evidence collectors ever, or there's something not quite right. The noose, there was when the head is considerably larger than the neck. So obviously, you can't pull the noose over your head. So how can you have the photograph of the noose on the floor or whatever it is? And then also there's so much pressure was applied that he had fractured his thyroid cartilage and his high hoard, which is bones in his neck, leaving the band of blood across his neck. I could be wrong where I'm pointing, but
These bones that are at the bottom of your neck, and I'm
Yeah,
sure that, you know, when you hang yourself,
it's higher up.
you don't touch these bones yourself.
Yeah, well, the doctor said it was like pretty much impossible to hang it to break those bones when
You
hanging
somehow
yourself.
hang himself upside down.
Yeah, that was it. That was the analogy he used, wasn't it? That he tried. So, and also there was blood on it, on the wound, so it would be all over the noose, and it wasn't. Can a
I'm
bed
sure there was
linen?
bits of blood on the cell floor as well.
Yeah, I think there was. And this guy asked the question: can a bed linen, can a sheet stretch that much that you could pull it over his head? And also, if it was that stretchy, so if they're saying, oh yeah, we just stretched it over his head to get it off him to take the photo, fine, okay. But if that's the case, how the fuck did he hang himself with something that's so stretchy?
Practicing bungee jumping, maybe?
It's fucking bullshit, mate. I'll tell you that, man. The location of the blood marks across his neck seems too low for hanging. So where he's got blood on his neck, again, going back to what you said, it was far too low. And it's more in line.
That's physics, mate. It's fucking gravity.
Yeah, well, it's.
Your neck and hang yourself, it's gonna go up.
Yeah, and these
How tight it is. If it's that tight, you're gonna decapitate yourself.
Yeah, and let's be clear, this is not me saying this or you saying this. This is a very experienced pathologist and doctor who's dealt with and seen many hangings and people killing themselves.
50,000, I think.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. And he said it's too low for hanging. It's more in line with strangulation. The mark would also be more consistent with using a cord or a wire. So basically, like a garrote would be more. That's the injuries that he had. So, and he said, I cannot imagine a bed sheet causing this neck to bleed like this, because if you think a sheet, whilst it would produce bruising, if you hung yourself with it, it wouldn't cut you.
Yeah.
Whereas when someone's got a garrote, it's going to legitimately cut you, isn't it? So just stop in there for a sec. If let's say they didn't do a check from when the moment that prisoner left in the morning, so for someone to kill him and not get on the cameras, the only people who could have done it is the other prisoner did it, and then they moved him straight out, and then they just left him and didn't choke him. So you could have the prisoner kills him, and then the prisoner and the guard who come to collect him stage the body, and then they leave, they transfer him out, and then the other guards do not do any checks, because whether they were complicit, whether they were paid off, or whether they just didn't do their job properly, so they didn't discover him until a day later. Like, it could be that, and it could be that if they'd done the first check at 10 a.m, they would have found him then 2 hours later. But because they didn't do the checks, they didn't find the body until the next morning. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
And then that would explain why they moved the prisoner out, and why they didn't replace him, because whoever arranged for the prisoner to be moved, whoever paid off the prisoner and was involved in that transfer, like, they're the ones who did it. The other guys are just really shit at their job, or they're in it as a group and they've done it. One of the guards has killed him, or whatever. But there's a few ways to do it quite easily.
Well, the first prisoner one, I think we can throw that out the window, because the pathologist said he hadn't been dead that long, wasn't he?
Okay.
So move that one. Could be the guards when they went in, when they found him. But it also could be, what if this, because let's be fair, the people who didn't want him speaking are the most powerful people in the world.
Oh yeah.
It could have all been pre-planned that Epstein was going into this cell, and there was already a way into this cell that the camera doesn't see.
Yeah.
And to be in that one cell that's closest to the office.
Yep, and I will say one other thing as well, which we'll touch on in a minute, a bit more. after we've touched on the evidence, there's also one other theory which we haven't mentioned yet, which is that Jeffrey Epstein didn't die, and that wasn't his body, and actually when they transferred the prisoner out, that was Jeffrey Epstein, and they've put him into, like, you've got the powerful people who he had evidence on have helped him escape and get away and changed his identity, or the CIA have basically disappeared him, and there's that side of it, because I think that's relatively, even if it's not plausible, it is doable from their point of view.
Definitely.
Because if all they had to do is that prisoner, like, I don't know if there's any photos of who the prisoner was, I'd have to double check, but if that prisoner had a resemblance to Jeffrey Epstein, then they could have, when they moved that prisoner, killed the prisoner, moved Jeffrey Epstein instead as the prisoner. No one's really tracking that until a day later. Like, they're tracking it, but they're not looking for him, so it's just a routine transfer, and then he just disappears on the way. They replace him with someone else, or whatever. By the time anyone knows about it, a day later, he's gone.
Yeah.
So there is that side of it. Yeah, so I will link this website, because there's got the photos of the the things which don't add up, the two nooses. So also, you've got the markings, you've got the noose and stuff, the breaks in the neck don't add up with the hanging. But there's also some other things that they found during these photos and this autopsy. They found an injury to the back of his neck, as well as an injection mark in his left forearm, which no one knows where it came from. There's no record of him having an injection. There's no reason for these injuries. That is suspect as fuck to me, because
this is my next point. There is no sign whatsoever of him struggling against the noose. And even people, when they hang themselves, it's your body's naturally...
You panic, don't you?
Struggle against it when you're there. I think that injection was something that calmed him down.
Either calmed him down, mate, or it could have just knocked him out, and then they strangled him, and then they hung him afterwards, after they'd already killed him and strangled him.
Agreed. Could be he was laying on the floor when they strangled him from behind.
Yeah, and they said the doctor says, he said, I can't imagine that they would have hooked up an IV to a dead man, but the autopsy shows that they ran a toxicology report, and there was nothing on it. There was a mark on the back of the neck, which seems perfectly positioned for someone's hands to be applying pressure there with a cord. So if you had like two hands on the pulling a cord like this on the back of someone's neck, there's like a red mark on the back by there, where the hand should be pulling the cord, which obviously you wouldn't get from hanging yourself, because all the pressure from hanging yourself is at the front of your neck. You wouldn't have anything at the back, because there's
the toxicology report. I can pretty much fucking be 110% sure they've got drugs out there that won't show up on a toxicology.
Oh god, fucking hell, CIA, mate, been designing those types of drugs for years, haven't they? But like you said about gravity, mate, I think that's the perfect analogy. The way gravity works, if he hangs himself, all the pressure's here, there's nothing on the back of his neck, nothing, because it's gravity, mate. It's physically impossible.
Hang himself with his legs like up in the air and his head that way, kind of off the bed, and it's neon physically impossible.
Yeah, so this Dr. Baden says the mark on the back of his neck seems ideally positioned for where someone's hands would be placed while applying pressure to a cord or another weapon wrapped around his neck. It doesn't line up with someone hanging themselves. The position found wasn't disclosed. So what is intriguing, or what he finds intriguing, is that they would not tell Dr. Baden for this documentary, or the 60 Minutes team who made a documentary, what position Jeffrey Epstein's body was found in, which to me is a massively critical detail in terms of, because that tells you everything, that lines up all the other evidence in any case.
Nowhere at all yet says what he hung himself from.
Does it not?
No.
So, you know, it is like, maybe they could argue that it's an ongoing investigation, or it was, so they didn't want to say where the position was. The photograph of the front of his neck was clearly taken on the floor of the prison cell. So if that's the case, like, wouldn't they take photographs of him up there as well? I suppose if they took him down to try and save him.
The prison officer cut him straight down, didn't he?
Yeah. And then there's also, so all of the photos are taken Yeah. All the photos seem to be on the prison floor, but then there's another one then where he's on his side, which is taken, he's on his side and it's on like a bed, and the marks on his body, insane. Like, there's like crease marks from a sheet, like all up his back, like, you know, where you've been laid in a bed for a long time, which again does not make sense if you've been hanging there for a few hours. Those marks don't last long, do they? You know, if you laid like and you got a mark on your face from you sleeping or whatever, they don't last long.
Especially with the blood sort of not circulating around your body, then marks would go quicker, wouldn't they, I think?
Yeah, and it's like, I don't know, it's so difficult, and I don't understand how they can not release
towards suicide, mate. Other than people saying they found him hanging.
There's nothing, none of it.
Evidence points towards suicide. No,
nothing. Just these guards who couldn't be fucking asked to do any checks for a day.
If someone got the amount of money they probably had, I wouldn't go do the fucking checks.
Well, mate, like, that's what they're basically telling you. On one hand, they're telling you these guards could not be asked to do their job. They were lying and forging these slips and checks. They were like forging them. But we should believe them in that they're the only evidence that points to suicide. But we should believe them because they're officers of the law. But they don't do, you know, they've just spent all this time forging all this shit because they couldn't be bothered to do their job. But we should believe them.
And nobody has looked back yet to see if all these type of things were being forged, you know,
previously.
Whatever it might be.
Yeah. Was it just on that day?
You'd think an investigation would be opened into that, wouldn't you? A massive fucking...
Yeah, you would think that.
You know, the governors, the board, someone's going to go, we should look back over the last couple of months and see what's going on.
Yeah, it's bizarre. So, coroners often use the things like the blood pooling and crease marks and stuff, marks around the extremities, things like this, to determine the time of death, and if a body has been moved, if the position of the body is shifted, it'll cause all the blood to settle into a new dependent area, because obviously the blood's not pumping. But due to the post-mortem coagulation, the shifting may not be possible after 6 to 7 hours after the death. The only photo of Epstein they provided from the cell was a close-up of the front of his neck. They will not provide photos or information on the position he was found in. They won't give any photos of him in the cell afterwards, because obviously the way a dead body works, that would give away certain things. Because all the blood, if they moved him, all the blood would sort of go to certain areas, so they could see where they've moved him and how they've moved the body.
It is with coagulated excessive evidence.
Yeah.
Probably the biggest part of the investigation.
Yeah, for sure, mate. The point being is, when you go over all of this, he could have been dead in the cell for hours, since they hadn't checked in since 10 p.m. the night before, in which case the lividity would have built up. So had they moved him before the officers got there and then took the photos, the lividity would have shown up in the original position because it likely wouldn't have shifted yet. So these photos, they're the ones they don't want you to see, because that would show, or could potentially show, allegedly show, that he had been dead since the night before, or the morning when the prisoner transferred. And that's the problem for me, is it's all very convenient. They won't tell you and show you certain information. This prison...
recognised his time of death of 6:39 a.m.
Yeah, but this dude, Dr. Baden, doesn't
say he died 4 or 5 hours before this time.
Well, I'm sure that with time of death they allow for a certain amount of hours either side anyway, don't they? But also, this Dr. Baden has said, because they won't release those photographs in the cell, because they won't tell the body the position they found him in, and because he didn't have any checks since 10 p.m. the night before, like the day before, there's no way for an accurate time of death to be given, which means that he's effectively saying he could have been dead from that 10 p.m. point. He could have been dead when the prisoner was transferred out. That's when it could have happened, because they would have been in the cell. So obviously,
probably knew all this.
Well, yeah. If you've got a conspiracy this big, especially with the people who would want him dead, they're going to have their own pathologist, aren't they? But my point being that there's no camera evidence to say anybody went into that cell, which means the only people who could have killed him are the other cellmate or one of the guards who was in the room before that 10 p.m. point. And to me, the thing which makes the most sense is the prisoner who gets transferred out or the person who accompanies him, because then you've got like a 24-hour gap before anyone sees him again or even goes in the cell, and that makes the most sense to me.
Without knowing kind of a time of death,
it's difficult, isn't it?
That's a logical answer, isn't it?
Yeah, and you can only go on what you've got at the end of the day. So we're going on what the evidence is. So we're trying to guess, and obviously we're not doctors and we're not experts in this. We're just going on what this doctor has said. And then, like, it goes back to what I said earlier. It's like, if he was killed either that night before or he was killed when the prisoner was transferred, then it becomes a question with these guards who are supposed to be doing the check. If they're in on it, that's why they haven't done the checks, because they want to delay it. If they're not in on it, they could have found him if he was killed, say, at 10 a.m. the night before or 8 a.m. before when the transfer happens. They could have found him at the 10 a.m. check, but they didn't, because they weren't doing those checks. So then they only discovered him the following morning, because they weren't doing their job properly. Do you see what I mean? So maybe they weren't in on it, those guys. They just were shit at their jobs and lazy.
That's what I mean. It'd be nice, they should open an investigation and see.
Yeah. Was it a regular thing that they did that?
Before, then you can see it. But if it only happened, this week or
that night, yeah. But then that's it, isn't it? Then if if you can see they've been forging the slips for months and years, like they've always done it. It's like, right, they weren't in on it. It's more likely to be the prisoner and the transfer team, which makes sense. And they would have found him earlier. Not that they would have saved him, but they would have discovered the body earlier. Meaning, then maybe they could have caught him as he was escaping to wherever he's gone. And you mentioned earlier the mountain of sheets and the mattress on the floor. Like, it's really odd that there was no blankets, but I don't know if it's standard to have a lot of extra sheets in the room. Like, I would have thought someone on suicide watch would have had a minimum amount. Like, I'd have thought someone on suicide watch would have...
They've got special sheets out now that will just rip on them. They won't take no weight.
Ah, right, okay. So, like, presumably, they were torn into pieces for making nooses, The mattress, it appears he preferred to keep his belongings all on the top bunk. Maybe the floor was cold or disgusting, so he preferred the mattress on the floor. There's also a sleep apnea machine next to him, which may have been easier to manage at a floor level, so like that's why the mattress might have been on the floor. But it's weird. Like those tubes and electrical cords would have made a great weapon for strangling someone. So like, why is it sitting on the floor in this photo and not bagged for evidence? Because they never at any point in the investigation considered the fact that he was killed. It was always, oh, he's killed himself, which again is just incredible that a high profile case like this of someone who's got all this like evidence on these big names and people, that they haven't even considered the fact that someone's killed him and tried to make it look like, and if they had, they would have discovered the same evidence that Dr. Baden did when he reviewed the photographs and the evidence. His conclusions are from looking at the evidence, whereas the people who did the photographs and all this stuff, like, they were there, you know, they were there to collect the evidence.
Okay.
Yeah. So just wrapping up then, you've got some theories, so go through these quickly, mate. Tell me what you think. Jeffrey Epstein is alive, and they just basically smuggled him out. For me, my personal opinion, that's false. I think he's more dangerous to the elites alive, and I think ultimately it was better for him to be dead than try and save him and keep him quiet that way. He's got too much on him, and the fact that he would have come so close to going to prison, and he knows that they basically left him there, like, he's always gonna have that on them. So I think that's unlikely. They would have probably preferred to kill him. What do you feel about that?
Highly possible, but I've got to agree with you. I think maybe, he's better off dead to everyone, not just them.
Yeah.
But what if he had things in place that after his death all this information comes out?
Yeah, there is that. So like, if he said that to them, they'd get him out, wouldn't they? And tell you what, it is so doable, mate, to get him out. And those people, they're so powerful. Literally, and like, I've thought of this literally off the top of my head. You get the prisoner who was in his room to look a little bit like him. You kill him. You switch places. He gets transferred out before anybody knows that there's Jeffrey Epstein supposedly died. By the time they discover the body a day later, he's like in the prison transfer. He gets out. He's swapped with someone else. He goes and fake passport, all the rest of it. He's got all the money in the world to disappear. He's gone before the time they've even found this body. The pathologist.
They need a prisoner who look like him. Within 2-3 minutes, professional makeup artists could have anybody looking like him.
Yeah, plus when you add in Photoshop and stuff like that, and that's and that's why they're a bit thing with the photos, maybe. And then you've got people who say that the photographs are not him, they're faked, they're photoshopped. That's not his ears or his nose or his eyes. I think the one thing with that is, if anyone's ever seen a dead body, which sadly I have, dead bodies change when the blood stops pumping and the oxygen. So there is that, and lividity and rigor mortis and things. Things change. So I don't know whether I necessarily use that as evidence to say the photos are fake. Now, however, Photoshop and makeup artists and things so unbelievably skilled these days that, like you say, 10 minutes with a makeup artist and then another 10 minutes on Photoshop to touch up the photos, done. You know what I mean? So definitely doable, definitely a possibility. I still lean to the idea that they want him dead, and I'll tell you why in a minute. I believe that it was the royal family who did it, but we'll get to that to finish off. There's there's all sorts of different things, and right, and there's not necessarily a need to create an illusion of Epstein to portray him as dead, because they didn't have to release those photos.
No.
They could just say Jeffrey Epstein's died, you know, like they've done with many other people, and that's it. So it's a bit, I don't know. Does the media lie? Yes, of course they have. Have they fabricated information, swap photographs to use in stories? Have they staged scenes before? 100%. Have they created false flags to give appearances to people died? Yep. Have they shown numerous post-mortem photographs with evidence tags on people? Yeah. Are these photos of Epstein's body photoshopped? I had a look at a couple of the photos, and I had a look at all the evidence that you would normally find of Photoshop pictures, and there's not one thing that I can find on there. So
the thing, skilled people, they gotta go through layer upon layer.
Yeah, but there's normally, like, you can find some little details, like just something, even if it's yeah, and even, I'm not saying like I'm an expert in it, but like even a little detail which you think that could be, not to say, oh yeah, that's photoshopped, but just that could be. There was nothing, which,
and I think, like we say, if there was something, there's somebody out in this
somebody better, more skilled than me would have found it. 100%.
You can't see they've ripped them pictures to shreds trying to find something.
Yeah, it's and then there's people saying it's a clone, of course, and you get all this random shit.
Skilled makeup artists could make an exact resemblance of that thing.
Do you know? Yeah, 100%, mate. The other theory is that he was taken away. It wasn't him who died, but not because he's escaped and the elite have helped him escape, but because they've taken him into witness protection, planted a lookalike, done the whole death thing, killed, like someone's been killed, blah blah blah. They've made the photos. The photos are legitimate photos. They're just not of Epstein. Someone did die, and he's been smuggled away either by the FBI or Mossad or whatever, and he's singing like a canary. And over the next 5 to 10 years, they're just going to gradually just take all these elites down.
This is the one I really, really want it to be. Because then you can also use the answer, the photos are him. It's just a makeup artist who's made
him look dead. Yeah. Yeah.
That's
as much as
I can't see him not having something in place that when he dies, things are coming out.
Maybe Ghislaine Maxwell is that thing though, isn't it? Like, and she got pinched quite soon after.
I don't know, it's just, I think something would have...
The other thing is, Ghislaine Maxwell pretty much knows everything which Epstein does as well. And that was one of the funniest memes of 2020, was when she was arrested and someone put a picture up and said, like basically said, I'm sorry to hear that Ghislaine Maxwell has killed herself next week. And that was really funny. Fucking scumbags.
She can't die now, come on, with all that's gone on.
They don't mate, they don't care though. That's the thing.
Suicide isn't an option with her now. They played this.
I see, but I think they're so arrogant that they would kill her off if they felt it necessary, and they think that what we tell you is what happened, and there ain't nothing you can do about it. That's what I think that they think, like
something like that. Going along with your Royals idea, I think she might have a nasty car crash or something.
Yeah. So yeah, going back to my Royals idea. So it's very, very clear that Jeffrey Epstein had evidence on Prince Andrew. There's witnesses on Prince Andrew, and Ghislaine Maxwell was there with Prince Andrew. So the witnesses, if you read the witness testimony about Prince Andrew, very, very compelling, very, very clear. It's detailed. It's detailed about him. It's detailed about his body. Very, very. I don't know what the word is. Like believable. Like then, if you coupled that in with some video, because they've already released a couple of pictures. She had one of the witnesses had a picture. it was very likely before Jeffrey Epstein died that Prince Andrew was going to be eventually arrested, because he's already refused. The FBI are trying to speak to him, and he's refusing to speak to them. Now that tells you everything you need to know, because
He did an interview with the BBC, didn't he?
and he said he was going to cooperate.
Yeah.
He's refused. He is categorically, the FBI have said, he is refusing to answer any questions. He won't go to America.
What is too much evidence against him? You know,
Yeah.
if it looks like a duck, it's a fucking duck.
Yeah. So this takes me to the next bit. We know the royal family is partial to, they will kill people if they need to. You know, that's a fact.
Allegedly.
It's a fact, mate. over the years, the royal family has killed people. Like, it's just the way it is. Please don't kill me.
I said allegedly.
Yeah, it's alleged. Obviously, it is alleged. I don't want to get sued or killed. So my theory, or a theory, it's not even my theory. A theory I read was they killed Jeffrey Epstein. So then, when Jeffrey Epstein has died, and obviously Prince Andrew was a hot topic in the UK, but he was also a hot topic within the royal family. Prince Harry has realised, oh fucking hell, they killed Jeffrey Epstein because he was going to expose Prince Andrew. If they can do that, you know, he kind of put two and two together and thought, fuck, maybe they did kill my mum. Or maybe he's suspected it all along, but he's kind of, no, you know, my nan wouldn't do that. And then suddenly this has happened, and it's brought up a lot of old memories, and he's thought, fuck. So, him and Meghan have thought, fuck this, we are out. We want nothing to do with it, we're out. They've told the Queen and Philip and William and said, look, we're not going to say anything about it, but we're leaving, and you leave us alone. We won't, you know, we won't kind of blow the whistle. We won't do anything. We won't say anything. And then you've had the big fallout, but there was never really like this reason. They kind of created this weird thing between Meghan and Kate, which wasn't like, if that wouldn't be a reason for them to emigrate and completely leave the royal family. Like, it was weird. And then there was rumours that they were going to do this big blockbuster interview, and it was like, oh. And then all of a sudden, if you line up the kind of the timelines and stuff, when Meghan and Harry there was rumours they were going to do this big interview in Canada or America or whatever. That was when the media really went after them, and the UK public then turned against them. Oh, they're abandoning the royal family. Who gives a fuck? By the way, let them get on with their life. Like, do you know what I mean? If I'm Prince Harry, by the way, I got a kid, and I'm thinking, well, I don't want what happened to my mum to happen to my wife and my kid. And do you know what I mean? I'd be wanting to get as far away from them as fucking possible. Yeah, fucking hell, mate. But that was when they really ramped it up, like the press and everything. And you know, we've talked about many times how easily the UK press is used by the higher ups of the government and the royal family to tell the people what to do, basically. And the people obliged, and you know, oh, we hate Kate, we hate Meghan, blah blah blah. Prince William, Prince Harry, I can't believe he's doing that. Play them like fiddles. That's my theory, mate. Anyway, what do you think of that for a theory?
It's a pretty fucking good theory, anyway. Let's be fair.
Oh yeah.
But you could probably theorise on another 20 people who'd have just together with that theory.
God, yeah. But when you think of the influence that would be needed to pull it off, like who has got more influence than the royals or the MI5, MI6, that sort of thing. It's an interesting theory.
America on American soil under Trump's watch. Clinton and people like that have got to be involved somewhere.
Yeah, you'd have to have help, wouldn't you? But like
an operation like this in America without serious help from America.
Yeah, of course you would. But that, you know, the
it's an involvement of a lot of different people.
It is,
Maybe
but
the royals are the ones who
they've
gave that order.
they've done, yeah. Like, I'm not saying like the Queen's travelled to America and done it herself. You know, she's given the order. It goes to MI5 or MI6 or whoever. They pass it on to their agents in America. They've got some contacts in the government. You know, whatever. Like, and I will say this again. Everything which we've talked about is theories based on a lot of it based on evidence. It's everything is alleged, and like I say, that was my theory. It wasn't my theory. It was someone which I read, but it does add up to me a lot, and just entertain. You know, it's interesting to talk about. Jeffrey Epstein is a massive cunt, and I'm glad he's dead. I just wish that he could have suffered either by having the death penalty and it going drastically wrong. So, like, the electric chair broke and he ended up being electrocuted non-stop for 24 hours or something. But
I'm kind of hoping he's not dead yet. He's going to spill the beans.
And he's going to expose them all.
And then they're going to get back at him and he's going to fucking suffer.
But then I would love it if he's gone into like witness protection. He's got like, and he's going to roll over on it and he's going to give up everyone, every celebrity, every politician, every member of the royal family, everyone who's ever done those nasty fucking shit, and they all get exposed. And we have like a massive reboot of the ruling classes in America and the UK, whereby like the royal family gets demolished and all the politicians get fucked off, and we have to have like new parties, new politicians, people who actually genuinely want to improve the country and help the people and make the world a better place. That's my hope. Do I believe it will happen? Fucking no. They're too powerful. There's too many of them. This is what it is. Say again?
Down with the machine.
Down with the machine, bro. Down with the machine. And that seems like the perfect way to finish. Interesting conversation, mate. We'll be back in next episode. We'll be looking at Princess Diana and the reasons why she might have been murdered and who would be behind it in part 2 of our little look at the death of Princess Diana. So that'll be interesting. Kind of falls into what we were just talking about.
Yeah.
And but yeah, we'll be back soon. Subscribe to youtube.com Ace Podcast Nation and tell us what you think about Jeffrey Epstein and how do you think he's alive? Do you think they killed him? How do you think they killed him? Did he kill himself? Give us your theories. I love talking about it. You can follow us on social.
Killed him.
Yeah, who killed him? Got follow us on social media. You got at Acecast Nation on Twitter or at Rhys P 978 on the old Insta, and tell us your theories. And you can also get the audio versions at the usual podcast and radio apps, and we'll get some headphones sorted for Rhys as well for next episode, just so his audio is a little bit clearer. It's not too bad though. Not too bad at all, and I'll tidy it up a bit as well. But yeah, cheers mate, see you next time.
Always a pleasure. Nice one, sight.
Down with the machine.